Welcome back to online class of English for class 12 by Madhumita ma'am. Well, students, how are you doing? Do you read newspaper, magazines? These days we are coming across a word which is frequently used in newspapers or in media. The word is pandemic. Well, do you know the difference between pandemic and epidemic? Pandemic, it's an adjective. It means widespread epidemic over a wide geographical area and affecting a large proportion of the population. Epidemic, it's a noun. It means a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time. Pandemic is also used as a noun, meaning a pandemic disease. The WHO more specifically defines a pandemic as a worldwide spread of a new disease. On March 11, the WHO officially declared the COVID 19 outbreak a pandemic due to the global spread and severity of the disease. So, children, let us update ourselves with new vocabularies from time to time. Now, let's go back to the lesson, the last lesson, and I'm going to start from the last paragraph of page 5. But before that, let me ask you a question. Why did French find learning his lesson on French so easy that day? French found learning his lesson on French very easy that day as he was full with remorse and repentance for not learning it before, for avoiding his classes, for skipping his classes. And that is why, being the last day, he wanted to give all his efforts to learn it. Now, look at the text. Then, from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world. The clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. M. Hamel advised all the villagers and the students not to forget their language. He also said that the French is the most beautiful language in the world. It is the clearest and the most logical. Mother tongue is the representative of a nation's true identity and character. It acts as a binding force, unity among the countrymen. He rightly said, when a nation is enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Then he opened a grammar and read us a lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. French felt that his last lesson was so easy. And in fact, he found M. Hamel teaching the lesson with so much patience that he had never done before. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. After that, M. Hamel gave new notebooks to all the students. There were two words written on each notebook: France, Alsace. They looked so beautiful. They looked like the flag of France hoisted at the top of their desks. Everyone was filled with the feeling of patriotism. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Just like that, only the desks and benches. Sorry. Once, some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French, too. Everyone was busy in writing their last lesson. There was only the sound of the scratching of pens over the paper. Even the most little children sitting in the class, they were also tracing the fish hooks, writing the French alphabet as if it was French too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Well, there is an ironical tone underlying this statement. It showed the extreme fear of French. French feared that imposing of German language on them would even make pigeons coo in German instead of French. It implies that whether slavery could be restricted to humans only or on nature too. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. French saw M. Hamel looking at the benches, desks, windows, at the students, as if he was trying to take screenshots of all the memories in his heart. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Just like that, only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the half vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. There had been so many changes in the school. The desks and the benches had grown worn, whereas the walnut trees had grown taller. The hofbein plant that he had planted himself had twined about the window to the roof. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country the next day. French could feel how broken hearted M. Hamel was when he could see the man seated on the chair and looking at every memorable things around him. He could hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their things because they had to leave the country the next day. Well, children, this much for today. Now it's time for home assignment. The question is, French thinks, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? What could this mean? Write this question in 20 to 30 words. Thank you.